you know we try to bring you interesting stories and fascinating people. And I've got a bloke in the studio about to chat with us by the name of Eddie. Now, Eddie didn't have the easiest of upbringings. He and his mother lived in Housing Commission in Mount Druitt. She couldn't get a home loan approved, so Housing Commission was all they could manage at the time. And that's when Eddie thought, I've got to do something about that. At 14 years of age, he got his first job at McDonald's. And he worked hard. He said yes to plenty of extra shifts. And after 4 years, he managed to buy his first home. Not bad for an 18-year-old. But that's when something changed. That first home turned into 2, 2 turned into 4, 4 turned into 10. And fast forward to today, Eddie Dilleen is a property mogul. He's 33 years of age and he's very kindly agreed to join us live in the studio this morning. Eddie Dilleen, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You are a property mogul at 33. How does that feel?
It feels good. I'm obsessed and very passionate about real estate, and it's my passion, and I just want to buy as many properties as I can, and also, help others out there with telling them the knowledge that I've learned along doing this, for the last 10 years plus.
This won't come as a huge shock to you, Eddie, but there'll be some people who'll be cheering you on, and there'll be others who'll be hating every minute of this when they learn how many properties you own. You'd expect that, right? You would have heard that feedback already?
Absolutely. Look, I used to be one of those people as well that, I grew up in Housing Commission, basically in poverty, and I had that attitude when I was growing up at first, that, it's not fair when other people have money and I don't and everything like that. But I realized after a couple of years, if I kept having that attitude, then nothing would change. So I was like, I've got to, find a way to get ahead, and property was my vehicle.
And you would have heard the debate that's been raging about property ownership and people finding it too hard to get into the market. Have you got some sympathy for younger people who say, I can't break in?
I do for sure, but I've also got tips, tricks and strategies, right? The average information that people know out there is it's completely incorrect, and it's the system itself that I believe they don't teach you in school, unfortunately, about property, about taxes, about any of that stuff. So I don't blame them for feeling that way, but you can do it, and there's so many different strategies once you are dedicated to actually learning the knowledge.
You're happy to share a few of those tips and tricks this morning?
Absolutely.
All right, first though, you're going to tell us how many properties you own. Now, brace yourself, get ready. Eddie, how many properties do you own?
I own over 110 properties.
110?
Yes.
The property is worth how much?
Portfolio, almost about $90 million.
And how much does the bank own out of all of that?
Roughly $35 million.
So you've got about $60 million worth of property that you own outright?
Correct, that's right.
Okay, we need to know how you did it. His name is Eddie Dilleen, the property mogul. 110 properties to his name at the age of 33. So how do you do it? I know that's a big question to ask, and I'm sure there's not a simple answer, but what tips can you give people?
One of the first tips would be treat property and if you're investing in property, treat it like the game of Monopoly, right? So start small, start with what you can afford, and buy something as soon as you can, but make sure it's also, from an investment perspective, it takes care of itself. The rent covers the expenses, and it also has capital growth, and you can use one to then leverage into 2, 3, 5, 10 and just keep it rolling. Okay,
so a smart buy makes the beginning really beneficial, right? Because it means that before you've even started, you know you're ahead, right? Because you bought something for under the value of what the market might value it at.
For sure. What my strategy is buying a property that's discount, buying a property that's actually under market value. And I know I have a lot of haters out there that say you can't buy a property below what it's worth, but I'm living proof that you can.
Okay, how do you do that? What do you look out for to make you think, hang on a moment, this is being undervalued?
So the first thing I do is I look at do a thing called a comparable market analysis, which basically looks at what other properties are selling out there at the moment and how much are they selling for. And if I can get a property that's maybe not on real estate or domain by, hitting the ground running, building up a lot of connections with real estate agents, it's like anything. If there's an urgency in the sale and a property needs to be sold quickly, the price usually reflects that.
Okay, so you're looking for things that are off market?
Yes.
And as far as buying, if it is on the market, do you care about going to auction or do you avoid auctions?
I try to avoid auction when possible. It depends on the circumstances. Like if I want to buy at an auction when like there's not many people there and the market has a lot of negativity about it. So right now everyone's talking a lot of bad stuff about Melbourne, but I would be showing up to auctions in Melbourne to try to get those bargains.
Okay, where are the properties? Where are they situated? In Sydney and elsewhere?
Yeah, so out of the 110 properties that I own, I've got ones in Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, Melbourne. I stick to main metro kind of markets like that.
Okay, and what about how far out of the CBD do you travel when looking for properties to buy? Because I know some people have got, a rule of thumb where they say within 10 Ks or 15 Ks or 20 Ks of the CBD.
Mine vary, but usually within an hour roughly. So I've got one sometimes as close as 5 minutes to the city, as far as sometimes like an hour to the city. So I don't discriminate on the area or the type of property. I'll buy a house, a townhouse, a villa, or even a unit.
Okay, but you look out for those opportunities that if you think this place is getting a bad rap at the moment and sentiment is down, that might be an opportunity for Eddie.
For sure. Like people see like opportunities like that. And usually, people see issues with markets like that and usually run away from them. Whereas, that to me is an opportunity to buy something when there's not as much competition out there.
All right. What about interest rates?
Interest rates are high, but I really believe they're going to go down next year. And most of the big banks are predicting they are going to get cut next year. And if they get cut, which I believe they will 100%, that's going to make the market explode. So,
okay, but what about during the rises, during these wave of interest rate rises, when they've gone up 0.5%, up 0.25%, up 0.25%, up 0.5%? This has put a big bill on your bottom line.
Look, what happens when interest rates go up as well is that rents get pushed up as well, unfortunately. And that's what I learned even before I owned a property. When rates go up, naturally rents go up. And this has happened from what I've studied. Obviously I'm only 33, but I've looked back, far beyond that and looked at the data. And anytime rates go up, rents go up. So yes, my $35 million worth of debt, the repayments went up massively, but the rents naturally went up on their own. It's not like I was hiking them up because of that. Like inflation, unfortunately, pushed rents up, and that's just the system itself. Like it's not an investor's fault or anything.
Okay, have you been forced to sell any?
I haven't been forced to sell any, but I have been selling about 15 or so properties recently, or that are in the process of getting sold, just to consolidate. And some of these properties I bought, they've already doubled or tripled. Like the odds of them doubling or tripling again in a short time frame like they have is pretty unlikely. Already
we're getting messages, Eddie, and you anticipated this. This bloke is part of the problem. What do you say to those people?
I say the problem's not me. The problem is the system that we're in. Again, they don't teach this in school, but and also you need landlords in Australia. I grew up in housing commission, right? If anyone knows it as how hard it is, it's me, because I grew up in poverty and our only source of income was mum's Centrelink, right? So before we moved in housing commission, there was a 10 to 12 year wait for public housing, meaning that we rented for 10 to 12 years while mum was waiting to get on public housing, right? And this is when I was before I was a teenager. So the government cannot supply affordable housing for everyone. If you speak to people out there that actually have lived in housing commission, and I grew up in that area, it's a 10 to 14 year wait for a government housing house.
And you've worked hard. You were working at Macca's, so you've obviously done the hard yards to be able to buy something. And you were how old when you bought your first one?
I was about 18 and a half when I bought my first one. Ugly 2-bedroom unit.
And do you invest in anything else or just property?
Mainly just property. I've started businesses and I've bought a few stocks and shares and things like that. But property to me is the best way to make money and get rich.
Why, you feel like you need to feel it, you need to see it, you need to be able to drive past it, even though some of these properties you would never have seen before, right?
Correct. I bought one sight unseen. I've done a pest and building inspection report on there. But to me, property's safer. And I'll give you an example, right? The bank has shares. They will barely even lend you money to buy their own shares, but they will lend you money to buy property. So that's, again, the system. That's the system we live in.
The young property mogul Eddie Dilleen is with us this morning. He owns 110 properties, and this all started with a first job at McDonald's and working really hard. What about mistakes? Have you got any lessons that we can learn through errors that you've made over the years?
Some of the mistakes I've made is getting emotional when picking the right property, and thankfully this only happened after I had the first 50 or 60.
Oh, mate, if you thought that some people were hating on you before, even more so now. But I'm not, because I love people who have a go and get into it. We've already got a prediction from you about interest rates. You think they are coming down next year, and as far as property prices in a place like Sydney, they're just going to keep climbing, aren't they?
For sure. Like, when the rates come down, the prices go up, unfortunately, and that's it. So when people are out there and they're like, I'm going to wait until later, and it's really hard, but like, that's how you get ahead. You do things when things are hard, and then when the rates come down, like, the prices are just going to go up even higher. So like, you don't have time to wait, but there is always a way to buy property.
What does your mum Beth make of this? The kid growing up in Housing Commission in Mount Druitt, who now has a property portfolio worth about $90 million.
She gets scared sometimes that I've bitten off more than I can chew, but I like that kind of way of trying to progress in life and get to climb the next mountain and do something. Otherwise, you just get bored.
Well, congratulations for what you've done so far. Who knows what the future will bring. Please tell me that Mum's in a nice home now, is she?
I bought her a house a couple of years ago, thankfully. I got her out of Housing Commission.
Oh, you're a good man for doing that for your mum. Well, thank you very much for coming in. And look, I know you know this better than anyone, but there's always going to be mixed feedback on a topic like this. But you can't have a go at someone for having a go and getting out there and playing within the rules, which is exactly what you've done. Thank you so much for coming along.
Thanks so much. Great pleasure.
Eddie Dilleen, the 33-year-old property mogul, joining us live on 2GB Breakfast.